Welcome to the first day of the first called special session. Happy to have you here to celebrate that event. Throughout this legislative session here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, again and again, we have looked at the mountains that we had to climb on policy, and every time Lieutenant Governor Patrick was there. He'd been with us on school choice. This is the third time he'd passed us. He was in the trenches on fighting the culture war issues, DEI, gender mod, women's sports, drag queens, all of that. The tech advances that we made here, historic, first-time tech advances, there for that, the border, property taxes. He is the guy conservatives in Texas look for leadership. We're very happy to have him join us this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Dan Patrick.
Morning, everyone. Hi, Sherry.
Glad to see you brought the coffee.
Yeah, it's iced tea. I've never had a cup of coffee in my entire life. I don't know if I could handle it. No cigarettes, no coffee. Only a margarita on occasion. So today may be an occasion.
You need more space. There, I'll give you
And too sweet and lows. My wife hates that.
So, Governor, I started on our list of successes.
Yes.
How does it look to you? How does it look from up at 11th in Congress as we're speaking here from 9th in Congress?
So this has been a tale of two cities in this session. It's been really hard. Probably the hardest session we've ever had for lots of reasons, which we'll talk about. At the same time, very successful. Extremely successful on many fronts, except a couple of big ones, and that is property taxes, school choice, and a number of other bills, which we'll talk about. But I did a little recap this morning of the 30 priority bills that we laid out. 15 of them passed as Senate bills. Another 7 passed as House bills on the same topic. Every bill doesn't have to be a House bill or a Senate bill. And then we have 3 on hold, which is teacher pay, the property taxes, and the compression part of that, and 5 died. So let me tell you the good news first. So what passed was Senate Bill 10, teacher retirement, the first time ever COLA. Senate Bill 12, the drag queen shows, keeping the drag queen performers away from children. Senate Bill 14, finally, the gender modification surgery passed. We passed that last session twice. It didn't get a hearing. This time it passed the House. Senate Bill 15, stopping men playing girls' sports in college. Senate Bill 17, a strong DEI bill to address that in higher ed. Senate Bill 18, addressing tenure. And this story, let me just pause here for a second where this came from. Last fall, out of nowhere, the Senate faculty at the University of Texas said, we're going to teach critical race theory, DEI. We're going to do whatever we want. And I responded in a tweet, we banned CRT in K through 12 last session. You're a publicly funded school, we'll ban it in our publicly funded higher ed universities. They responded, we do not pay attention and are not accountable to the Board of Regents or the legislature. I then said, I guess we have to look at tenure, because no one should be that arrogant, particularly getting a taxpayer paid paycheck, to say we're not accountable to anyone. So as we passed that bill last week off the floor, or this week, I guess it was last week, maybe this weekend, I said very clearly, I hope the Senate faculty at the University of Texas are listening. They do have to listen to the legislature. The bills were a little bit different. We banned it in the Senate totally, but it would have grandfathered the current ones who have tenure. What we actually liked about the House bill was a better tweak, was that they didn't ban it, but they allowed people with tenure now to be fired. So we like that language, and we think it's a very good bill and a strong bill. It gives the universities more power for cause to get rid of professors. We're not trying to stifle academic freedom, but we're not going to let that be an excuse to pull down America, to pull down Texas, to pull down capitalism, and to pit white against black, black against white, gay against straight, Christians against non-Christians. That's what's happening at our higher universities. And these two bills together should lead the nation. Senate Bill 22 was an initiative that came out of my bus trip traveling around the state, and that was to support rural law enforcement. We had sheriffs making in the $30,000 range, deputies in the 20,000, not enough, 5 deputies covering 1,000 square miles. So for the first time ever in history, Texas, the state, is investing money into over 230 rural counties. I think the total budget was around $350 million, so that we can lift the salary ranges of our sheriffs, our deputies, our jailers, our DAs, our investigators, because they have a right to law enforcement. That was a big lift. Senate Bill 24, alternatives to abortions. Senate Bill 25, nursing scholarships. We need nurses. We've created scholarships for lots of different areas, science teachers, math teachers, law enforcement. This will give scholarships to people who want to be nurses. Senate Bill 26, also out of my bus tour through 130 some cities. We have a great need for mental health care in rural Texas. This is a over $2 billion commitment to mental health care in rural Texas, primarily from Amarillo to Wichita Falls, to the Valley, to Midland. We're building hospitals and more beds. 50% have to be forensic, meaning for people who are arrested to have mental health issues. And why 50%? Because the wait list to get in is about 98% forensic. We have so many people with mental health issues backed up in our jails. We need to help those local counties on that. Senate Bill 28, $1 billion into water, because that is what Texas will be focused on in the future as we continue to grow. And now 29, Senate Bill 29, ending these COVID draconian mandates that counties and cities put on as an excuse to shut down businesses, shut down schools, even shut down churches. And then, of course, our budget, Senate Bill 30, supplemental budget. And then Senate Bill 7 and 8 didn't pass as those numbers, but they passed in the Sunset Bill, Senate Bill 26 and 27. And I'll talk a little bit about that, Sherry, in a moment. The House passed our equivalent of Senate Bill 20 to us to recall district attorneys who are not following the law. Senate Bill 13, their version, HB 900, to address pornographic library books. I would have brought one today to show you, but I might have been arrested. That's how bad they are, Senate Bill 2, voting fraud, they passed us 1243. But let me tell you what, we increased the penalty, Jack, back to a felony. But the Criminal Court of Appeals during the interim last session said that you also have to prove that someone knows they're illegally voting. Usually you don't have to prove the mental state of someone. As you've heard a judge say, ignorance is no excuse to violate the law. So our Senate Bill 2 fixed that so that all you have to be is found voting illegally and not, did you know you couldn't? And so the House sent us a bill. They did not hear our bill to fix it, but it did restore it to a felony. But we still have to go back and fix that mental state reason. Otherwise, you're never going to prosecute anyone for voter fraud or any other crime.
So, Governor, here's your time guy right here.
Okay.
So,
let me finish these last a couple. Senate Bill 11, then that was the school security bill. It passed as HB 3. Senate Bill 27, the specialty courts that we created, that was House Bill 19. Senate Bill 19, creating the TUF Fund, Texas University Fund for Texas Tech, UNT, University of Houston, Texas State. And then so the grand total of the 30 priorities, of the 30, 25 passed as either Senate or House bills. And so that's the good, part of the good, the bad, and the ugly.
and we're all about our CEO, Greg Sindelar, tells us over and over, we conservatives have got to celebrate the victories. It seems like we come out of these sessions and we go around down in the mouth, big victory, very strong session. But I know you wrote a letter to the governor yesterday with a list of things that you were concerned about. What's still on your mind, not failures, but work that we have left to do?
So there are a number of bills that need to pass, and I sent a long list to the governor. Number one, election integrity bills. Of the 14 we sent to the House, I think 12 didn't make it. We need election integrity bills everywhere. Harris County became almost a joke on the floor. Every senator from every other place outside of Harris County would say, that's another Harris County problem. We say, yeah, but it impacts the state as well. So election integrity. We passed the 10 Commandments bill. Put the 10 Commandments back on our schools. Should have passed the House. I really no excuse for that one. Prayer time back in school passed the Senate, did not pass the House. This one really flabbergasted me. Virtual schools. Now, that bill was authored and co-authored by Paul Betancourt and Royce West. They spent 1.5 years on a commission we set up to improve our virtual schools. And why? Because out of COVID, we learned we had to be better. And that bill was called on a point of order that it was a voucher bill. Royce West does not pass a voucher bill. So that needs to be brought back up. That made no sense at all. These points of order in the House, we'll get to that, were just a disaster this session. No excuse. Donna Campbell had a bill on telehealth medicine. Telehealth is powerful, important, and needed, but we cannot let doctors who are pain pill doctors use it to prescribe dangerous drugs and to people they don't know who they are on the internet. So that bill needs to be restored. And a number of other important issues, like how about border? Because we sent over, they had 2 border bills, HB 20, and then I think that was Matt Schaefer, and HB 7 by Ryan Guillen. HB 20 got called down on point of order. It got combined with HB 7, came over to us. We wrote a great bill. We sent it back. They sent it back, another point of order. It's crazy time. So we have to address the border security bill, the border force, very important. So a number of bills that didn't pass that need to be on the call, and more than those, but those are the key bills. And of course, school choice at some point in time, and property taxes, and those are the bills on the list.
So why do you think we're here today? Why did we need a special session? At least, I mean, one, when we're talking about many, what's happened that so many things went awry this session?
I want to answer this as best I can. I'm tired of the dysfunction of the House in passing legislation to us in a timely manner. And I'm tired of these points of orders that are called on good legislation like the virtual school bill. I'm tired of it. I have begged and pleaded with the House every session, send me your legislation sooner. This session, once again, we received 1,250 bills with about 3 to 3.5 weeks to go. 900 of those with 2 weeks to go. We can't hear them. It's tough to find which ones are the good ones and the bad ones to pass. Secondly, on April 3rd, we had passed 121 bills. They had passed 7. They spent the entire month of March basically doing resolutions and going away for long weekends. Nothing was done in March. Even by the 3rd week of March, I think they passed 80 bills. We were up to over 300. We had almost all of our 90% of everything that we voted out was to them by the end of mid to late April or the very first week of March, of May. We got everything out. And here's the problem. They don't hear under their calendar Senate bills really to the last 10 days to 2 weeks. And because of the points of order and shoving, the Democrats have total control of the House chamber. Total control. So we're a Republican majority state, and the rules in the House are set up to allow the minority to kill bills they don't like. And it's just dysfunctional. The points of order on conference committee reports, we've never seen it like that. I mean, you can get a point of order because the bill analysis, someone on the staff made a mistake and wrote the wrong word, misspelled something, got something out of order, and you kill the whole bill. People have worked, House members as well, and senators have worked 1.5 years before session. Various groups, Democrat and Republican, have worked on legislation. And it gets there after hours and hours and weeks of work, and someone says, oh, there's a word misspelled there. Send that back. The only reason the Texas Senate passes the conservative agenda that we do session after session after session is because in 2015, when I became lieutenant governor, the rules were changed to benefit the majority. People get frustrated if they elect you and you go and say, well, you know, the Democrats did this. They chubbed this bill. I mean, you shouldn't be able to get up for 10 minutes and talk about artwork in Italy to kill a bill. That's not what the people expect from us. So I've said to members over there, change the rules. Give yourselves a fighting chance of the majority. Now in the Senate, people say, well, when we change the rules on the blocker bill, we're going to run over the Democrats. I think every session we pass 700, 800, 900 bills every session. And usually less than 25 are partisan bills. Everything else is bipartisan. Bipartisan. 99%. In the House, I had maybe 5 points of order in a year. They have that over there on a bill. You can't function. And it breaks my heart to see good legislation killed because of that. So if the House doesn't change the chubbing rules, if they don't move up their clock, if they don't go to work in March, we're going to be in the same situation as we have been forever. When I talk to the veterans, and I'm now a veteran of 17 years, I guess, I've been around longer than most in the Senate, but those before me say it's been this way forever. And it needs to change. So if that sounds like I'm being critical, I am being critical because it's killing bills that people want us to pass.
So if you ever pass a budget out of the Senate, they usually pass unanimously,
Yes,
which means that Senator Eckhart and
Yes.
Senator Hall
yes.
are in agreement.
Yeah, this time it passed 29-2.
29
And I
to 2.
think
That's close to unanimous.
and every other budget passed either unanimous or 30-1. I think this is my fifth budget. We've had, what's that? 5 times 31 is 155. I think the vote is 150-5 total in 5 budgets. We come together. Look, I'm a conservative Republican. Everybody knows that, but we had some good legislation that came off the floor that were not partisan issues by different Democrat senators. They work with us. Here's the deal. When I was a senator and the blocker bill used to be 21, and we never had more than 20 Republicans, meaning the Democrats could block any bill, we would have to go up to the Democrats, even though it was 20-11. We'd have to go up to the Democrats and say, can we pass our bill today? Because bills were on the list. I mean, we're in the majority, 2011. Can we pass our bill today? So what was a practice became abused. And I believe in the House now, what was a practice, bipartisanship, has being abused. And if the Republicans continue to let themselves and leadership lets the Democrats run the House, this is going to have to change. Because once we changed the blocker bill where we said, you can't block us, come join us and help us. That's why we have bipartisanship on all these bills. They bring amendments. They say, yeah, how about this idea, that idea? We like to get bipartisan legislation. It's stronger to send it to the House. But for most of the last 2 weeks, I think Joe Moody and Chia and Trey Martinez Fisher were running the House, not the Speaker. So yeah, I'm fed up about it. It's time to call it out. It's not what the people expect.
And it's not like it was a close call. You and Governor Abbott won by about 1 million votes, didn't you?
Yeah, we won by a lot of votes. And look, it's very hard to work with someone who does not communicate. On Friday, about a week and a half ago, I got a text from the Speaker said, can I come over? I said, sure. It's the first time I've heard from him in 2 years. You'd be shocked by that. I haven't talked to him in 2 years, except to say hi, at some event. I happened to be talking to Ken Paxton before this, this event about the impeachment. But about six weeks ago, I was talking to Ken Paxton about some issue, and I mentioned I never hear from the Speaker. He said, Speaker's never returned one phone call from me, never had a meeting with me, I haven't talked to him in 2 years. Very hard to operate like that. So when he texted me and said, can I come over? I said, you bet. I should have had cookies. And he came over, and that's the day I took him out on the podium. Hey, I want to work with the other side. I can't work with the other side if I don't know who I'm working with, and 4 or 5 different House members came over and they all say, I'm working for the Speaker. I don't know who's speaking for what. Sometimes they come on their own, and I appreciate that. There's some leaders over there. But it's just crazy that you won't talk to anybody. Well, and let me say one other thing. Let me say this one, Sherry.
Okay.
The governor and I had about 12 hours of meetings over 2.5 weeks with generators to work on the grid. Great in-depth discussions, big generators, new players, all different people that are involved in the grid. The Speaker never came to one meeting, but he takes a position on policy. Well, you haven't been there. You haven't been there. So I don't get it. we're willing to work with anyone at any time. And, but it's just time to kind of call some of these things out because things have to change.
Well, I want to make sure my friend Bob Garrett takes me seriously. So I wanted to ask you about the impeachment
Yes.
and the Attorney General. What are your plans in the Senate?
So we appointed a committee yesterday to create the rules. It's been almost 100 years since the last impeachment. So we have to go back and look at the rules. Not much precedent. I mean, there's some, but times have changed in 100 years. But beyond that, that's all I can say. I will be presiding over a trial. It will be a fair trial. Sure, there'll be witnesses. I mean, I don't know what the House will present. I don't know what the Attorney General will present, but my guess is there will be witnesses and they will be put under oath and they will be cross-examined, I'm sure, by both sides. And it will be a regular trial. And at the end of that trial, once the facts have laid out, the senators will vote. And to all our friends in the media, I guess I got one or two out there, to all of our friends in the media, don't ask me any more questions because I can't answer them. Look at me like a judge before a case and look at our senators like that. Be respectful of their space and time. This is very serious. These are very serious people, and the Senate is going to do our job in a professional way.
So now we're in a special session. Got a call last night at 9 o'clock.
Yes.
So property taxes and border.
Yes.
What do you think?
I want to talk about property taxes because it's a really big issue. I'll get up if I can because I think we have some slides. When we were negotiating on property taxes for the last 5 months, the House was at appraisal caps and compression. We were at homestead exemption and compression, and we kind of couldn't get unstuck. So when the speaker came over that Friday a few weeks ago, again, I was grateful that he came over. He came over to talk about school choice. He suggested that we put legislation in HB 100 to try to put a package together. I appreciated that, but we talked about this. And he said, my focus is on businesses, small businesses. That's my focus, small businesses. And so I said, okay, here's some ideas. So this came a few days later. There are a couple of things we could do to try to break the logjam. We could end the reporting for no tax due franchise tax because this is an amazing statistic. There are about 2.6 million businesses in Texas. Only 166,000, Bob, pay the franchise tax. 166,000, because most are sole proprietorships or never actually operate, even if they follow a charter. So there are 1.7 million businesses that don't owe any tax, but they have to file. So let's get rid of that. That's ridiculous. Cost them a couple $100 just to say, I don't owe you any money. Number two, we could double the no tax due, because right now, if your revenues are under 1.25 million, you don't owe a tax. If we just doubled it to 2.5 million, we can take out 67,000 businesses. It was a cost of a couple $100 million a year to our budget. That's all. So literally, we could knock 40% off franchise payers off the rolls. Number three, we could cut the franchise tax another 10% on top of the 25% we did in 15. That would save business 1.2 billion. Or we could increase the personal property tax exemption. Now, if you don't own a business, you don't know what this means, but you have to pay tax on everything that's in your office, but your desk, your phones, everything else. Let me get out of the way, Bob, unless you want a photo of me for the album. So those four ideas I laid out, not interested. So if you're interested in saving small business money, any of these four directly save them more. Let's go to the next slide. No interest. So we're coming back here. So they were talking about a 5% appraisal cap. And you know that almost every organization came out against it because it distorts the market. It eventually will have taxes go up because we can't control the tax rate then at the local level. But the speaker wanted it on all businesses, all properties, homesteads, all residences, all, shopping centers, apartment, everything. And at 5%, this is what it would have cost us. It would have cost us $750 million over there in the first year, 1.7 in the second, 2.9 in the third, 4.1. And by 10 years from now, 13 billion in the budget. Unsustainable. That's math. You used to hear me say, I can't debate bad math. They never brought us any numbers in the entire time of the session. They never brought us any numbers on any proposal. Let's go to 8%. So the 8% appraisal cap, because when we were meeting the other night with the governor, the speaker said, can we do 8? And I said, maybe we can do 8, but only on homesteads. Don't want to do that. Don't want to do that. It doesn't really impact homesteads. But he wanted to do 8% across. He said, no, I got to have it for everybody. Everybody. 8%. It still costs us $12 billion to the budget. It's unsustainable. I asked him in that meeting with the governor sitting there, who would pay for this? He said, well, the school districts would just have to spend less money. And I thought, try to sell that one. Try to sell that one. And just wasn't practical. So he wanted to help small business. We gave him 4 reasons to help. We showed him his math didn't work. And at the end of the meeting, he said, if I can't get it for everyone, then I'm out. And I said, well, our offer's off the table. And he said, well, I'm going to take homestead exemptions out. Now, remember, they had just passed 147-0 homestead exemptions in the bill they sent us. Now, I couldn't figure out, why is he so hooked on this 8% for all businesses cap, which, by the way, the Texas Association of Business, the Texas Association of Manufacturers, the realtors, commercial realtors, none of them wanted it. They don't want it because it'll destroy the market. I couldn't figure it out. And one day he said in one of those meetings, he said, I own a lot of property. Not that it's about me. Now, anytime anyone says it's not about me, it's usually about them. If you go to Phelan Investments online, they own everything for decades. Proud to say 4th generation of owning property. If you have a cap on property, the taxes go through the triple net lease. But when you can hold your value down and hold property for decades and you sell it one day, it's a whopping profit. Now, I'm not saying he was doing that to benefit himself, but I could never figure why he wanted to do that. And he'll say, well, it just brings my rents down. Well, yeah, if you bring your rents down, well, that means taxpayers are helping you keep your rents low so your buildings stay full and your shopping centers stay full. So we didn't do that. I'm sure he's watching now and steam's coming out of his ears. I'm just telling you, I couldn't figure it out until he said it. Let's go to the next slide. So let's look at the $100,000 homestead exemption. That's what we had. We had $100,000 for seniors, $70,000 for everyone else. And then the House went to $110,000 and $100,000 for everyone. We loved it because look at this tax relief. By increasing, because we're now at 40, increasing it to 100, the homeowner at $100,000 saves about, let's just round it off to $700 a year. $700 a year. When you multiply that out times 5.7 million homeowners, times about $700, look at this. Bob Garrett, $116.9 billion in property tax relief with a homestead exemption that does not distort the market. And 40% of those homeowners or seniors almost, they weren't going to benefit from any appraisal cap. When I come to the table to negotiate, I bring numbers, data, facts. I don't walk in and say, this is a good idea and not be able to back it up. And I get these facts from a great finance team, from great senators who do hard work. So if we don't have a homestead exemption in this special session, included in the compression, we're going to leave that much money on the table. And how much is that to each homeowner? If you live in your home for 30 years, $700 a year is $21,000. I know the governor must be on our side with this. I can't imagine he wouldn't be. I can't imagine the governor will say to 5.7 million homeowners, you're not going to get a homeowner's exemption. He has on the call compression. Compression is fine, but it can't be the whole thing of 17 billion. Let's go to the next slide. I want to show you this. So we have 17.6 billion. Again, I bring facts, I bring data, I bring numbers. And anyone who wants to challenge them, we'll stand up to them. If we do all compression, as the House offered us yesterday, by the way, on the last day, they said, if you'll do all compression, we'll sign the deal. I said, we're not doing all compression. We gotta have homestead exemption. All compression saves you $710 on average. If you do 17.6 in all compression, 710. If you do 2/3 compression, again, compression's fine. If you do 2/3 compression and add homestead for the other third, look, $1,416.29. Take a photo of that. So if we do all compression, we are taking $700 out of the pockets of every one of the 5.7 million homeowners. $21,000 we are robbing from them. So I support compression. We did $5 billion in 19. In our current $17.6 billion budget, we have about $12 billion in compression and about 5.6 in homestead exemption. So we're not saying don't do some compression, but you can't do it all because look at the value you get. And I hear people say, well, compression will put us on a pathway to no property taxes. Compression is everlasting. No, the only thing that's everlasting is when you get an exemption, a homestead exemption. And let me tell you why I know the House knows that's good, and I know the governor supports this. I believe he supports this. Is because what did they put in HB 5? The new 313. The only reason we supported HB 5 in the Senate, by the way, was because it's another one of the incentive vehicles for dispatchable energy. And we eliminated the old 313s that I killed last session because I held the bill from going to the floor. Because 66% or so went to renewables, and we need more dispatchable. But what do they do in HB 5 that Governor Abbott loves and Dade Phelan loves? It gives exemptions. 10 years of exemptions, hundreds of millions of dollars to businesses and exemptions. So exemptions are good enough for big business, but not good enough for a homeowner who's struggling. $1,400 a year, every year, never stops. I will not step back from this. And I might be the last guy standing, but I'll be the last guy standing. Homeowners in this state deserve real property tax cuts. And that's a combination of compression and homestead exemptions. Let's go to the last slide. So let me show you why. And I know I have great friends here at TPPF that think compression can get rid of all property taxes. Okay, I do, I know. And friends on the outside. But Bob, I just look at you, Bob, because you've been hanging around for a long time. I recognize you more than some of the new ones, and Jack and others. Our budget this year is $321 billion. The state's share of that is $144 billion. You didn't know you were going to school today, did you? Total local M&O taxes projected for the next 2 years is $55 billion. To end property taxes through compression, we would have to come up with $55 billion. Now, how much is $55 billion? It's 38.2% of our entire budget. You'd have to cut school funding. You'd have to cut medical funding. You'd have to cut law enforcement. You'd have to cut everything. You can't have 40% roughly of your budget in compression to get rid of all property taxes. So if you want to get rid of all property taxes, you got to come up with $55 billion. That's what it takes. Now, we've already spent some towards that goal, but we can't do that. anyone who says, and forgive me, I don't want to offend anyone, but anyone who says we can eliminate property taxes by compression ran for governor and didn't win. I'll leave it at that. Okay? And if you say, well, could we increase the sales tax to pay for that? You could. You could. You'd have to increase the sales tax to around from the current 6.5% to somewhere between 10 and 12 cents. And by the way, those numbers fluctuate. Like it's 55 billion this year, it was 37 this. Those numbers fluctuate. So you'd have to almost double the sales tax to pay for that. Now, there'll be some people out there say, oh yeah, charge me 12 cents. Charge me 12% instead of 6%. Remember, plus 2 cents local. So your sales tax now is about 8 and a quarter, it would go to 14 or so, somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't think there's a vote to increase, Sherry, the sales tax a half a cent. So it's not possible. So the governor has put on the call compression. I support it, but not 100%. And I believe in my heart that the governor will support homestead exemptions. And I believe that the House will, because they already voted unanimously for homestead exemptions. Remember, their plan came out 147-0 for homestead exemptions. Our plan came out 31. So Governor Abbott has a total 100% unanimous support from legislators who have already voted for homestead exemption. So let's do both. I need the Speaker and I need the House. We're going to send out a bill maybe today or soon. It's going to be the same bill pretty much they sent us. Compression's about 2/3, homestead exemption 1/3. Okay, Sharon, I think it's time for questions.
Okay. Thank you, Governor. Great to have you here. Nothing we like better at TPPF than a good conversation about public policy. So, want me here?
Sorry.
First question, we want to get to everybody. I'm going to try to call in our guests first, but we'll get media questions as well. Yes, sir.
Let me preface this by saying, Lieutenant Governor, I'm a huge supporter of you and the governor in many, if not all of these initiatives. I do have a question though. The governor likes to say that Texas is the best place to start a business.
Yes.
And he touts those figures every time I hear him speak. So with that, if that's the case, then why do we have a need for tax exemptions in the 313 code? So,
and again, last year, I killed the 313s because they were being abused. And again, 2/3 were going to renewables. And somebody will give me a question, maybe this will lead into the grid. Because we are in a competitive environment and most companies will come here on their own. But sometimes we compete with North Carolina, Florida, other states for billions of dollars, like Samsung came here, will create thousands and thousands of jobs. And so sometimes a little piece gets you over the top. And that's why we cut it back by 50% from the original bill, the incentives. We have stringent work requirements in it. And we narrowed it down to manufacturing, technology, energy, dispatchable energy. Here's where we're on the grid. You heard the PUC, Peter Lake chair say earlier this in Bloomberg a couple of months ago, we need the breath of God to get through the summer. Now, if we want to kill the Texas miracle of businesses coming here and creating jobs, we've added, Fortune 500 companies, we've added lead the nation job growth, 11 million, 12 million people in the last 20 years. But you have to be able to turn the lights on. Can't sit in the dark. And we don't have enough dispatchable energy. We had 2% renewables in 2000. Today, around 35% or so, 38%. Another 10 years will be 60%. Wind and solar are fine as long as the wind's blowing and the sun's out. Our need for dispatchable energy, coal, nuclear, which is declining, and nuclear is holding steady, coal's declining, is natural gas primarily. There'll be other technologies coming online. We need 75 to 80,000 megawatts of power. We don't have it. And almost 40% of all of our plants are now 40 to 50 years old. So we need to incentivize new plants. Now, The governor and I disagree on this one issue, but I support the governor in where we are right now on this issue, this year of the grid. I believe, and the Senate believe, we just need to build reserve of 10,000 megawatts. You go to a company, any company, let them bid, get the best bid. They build the power, they sit there and they hold. They're the last on, the first off. But you got it there. Not everyone was in agreement on that. The big generator company sure didn't want it. But that idea didn't make it. So I came up with another idea. Say my staff, Lauren, Charles Swartner, all his team. We said, okay, what do we do to incentivize people to come here and build? Number one, we're going to give you a 0% loan for 20 years. You pay it back to the state. Now the House wanted 5%. We ended up at 3%. So we're going to give them a loan. Number two, we're going to give them a completion bonus. So if they complete, we need it in the next 3.5 years. If you start it today, it's going to take that long to build a new plant. And the third was to give you a tax abatement. And that was the only reason we passed in the Senate 5, or my only reason. So the three-legged stool, so that companies will come in and build. And I'm talking to companies now about trying to come in, find a pathway, because we have to have the natural gas power. It's the most important thing this session. So that's part of the reason. And so the governor supported this, and I appreciate it. And he said to me, he said, and by the way, we put a deadline on this plan. These companies, to get that 0% loan, or it's 3% now, have to do it by December 31st of this year. If they don't do that, then we know where we are. And if we don't have enough people building power, then the governor said we can sit down and talk about that reserve market, because we have to have the power. The governor and I spent hours and hours and hours and hours working together. I think at the beginning of the session, we were here. By the end of the session, we were here. And I'd like to have reserve, but we're going to try this. And if it doesn't work, then we'll try that. Let me explain to you why we have a problem. We have this energy market.
There's a lot of questions.
Okay, real quick. We have this where the generators make their money by scarcity pricing, when everything is running. So they don't want to have any more power than just a little bit more than we need. That's why they were against the reserve. And so they even tried to kill the bills we had. Todd Hunter did a great job on the floor. If you want to be entertained, watch that from last week when he took on the generators. I get it. They have to make money. I got it. But we have to save lives and keep our economy going. So that was the reason. So,
Next question.
sorry about that long answer. Bob. Oh,
Bob, it's Bob.
it's Bob. You're jumped over to the media side. Okay. go ahead,
Bob, okay. Also a guest.
Public school advocates, Governor, say that it would take $1,000 more per student, or 17% more, to make up for inflation since the historic school finance overhaul of 2019. So why is $17.6 billion for property tax cuts affordable when it's not affordable to put in money into the school formula that would guarantee teachers a permanent pay raise?
Yeah. So since I've been Lieutenant Governor, Bob, we put more money into public education than ever before. We put $11 billion package in 19, as I recall. This year, now since 100 didn't pass, and in some form that will probably pass later, we want teachers to have a pay raise. Already, though, we're putting about another $9 billion in this year to public education. So we continue to put money in, and yeah, it sounds good. We need $1,000. Well, the total now, I think it's around 6,200, 6,400. I forget the exact number now. A lot of numbers in my head. You just can't take it up to 1,000. It would have cost us billions and billions. Marion, do you know how much that would have cost us? You're my, okay, but it cost us billions and billions of dollars to do that. So it just wasn't practical. And by the way, some of those school districts, by the way, that are complaining, they took all the federal money and hired people with it. It was one-time money. I mean, I've heard from a few schools, I got to lay off 400 people. You shouldn't have hired them. It was one-time money. And so they put themselves in this predicament. We have funded schools a significant amount. And I've learned a long time ago, no matter what we did, if it were 1,000, they'd want 1,500. It's never enough. It's never enough. But look, we put a lot of money in the school fund. Yeah, no, it is. But teachers are leaving, not just for the money, Bob. They're leaving because there's chaos in the classroom. They don't feel safe. They're leaving because they're told to teach them things they don't want to teach about sexuality to kids in the 3rd grade. They don't like the pornographic library books that are in their school library, and they're under a lot of pressure. My wife is a longtime teacher. My daughter-in-law was a teacher. My mother-in-law was a teacher. I have my teaching degree. I never taught except student teaching. Teaching is the most noble, important profession we have because it builds the next generation, and we need to attract. But we've increased the salaries. We raised the teacher salaries on average about 3 or 4 or 5,000 the last 5 years, depending on what district you're in, some more. This session, we put a 2,000 or 3,000 across the board raise. I forget now, 2 or 3. And in rural Texas, where there's about a $6,000 or $8,000 difference, we gave them an extra 4,000. And we have done that. The bill didn't make it. House bill didn't. House bill. I can't help it if Ken King will kill a look. Ken King killed the teacher. Let's be very clear. The House killed the teacher raise bill and funding because they wouldn't pass a school choice bill, which 80% of Republican voters in Ken King's district support, and people all over the state support. So we didn't kill it. Next question.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Jack.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. Just going back to the whole property tax
Yeah.
issue. You talked about how, you really favor homestead exemptions, and the CEO here, obviously, the Public Policy Foundation came out all favor of compression. You mentioned, or you referred to Don Huffines, but they're not saying to reduce, eliminate property taxes all in one swoop. They're saying do it gradually. And so I'm wondering, why is that not a good idea? I mean, are you saying that you don't support eliminating the property tax?
Jack, did you remember my slide? $55 billion, Jack. I'm not gonna,
But that's,
Hey,
I'm-
and
I'm
by the
saying
way-
gradually.
Jack, you can't get there because gradually it keeps growing, by the way. Depending on the year, it's going down a little bit this year because we put a lot of money in. You can't get there. And by the way, homestead exemptions are permanent. They're in the Constitution. They're there. Compression, if you get rid of property taxes altogether, school property taxes, which are about half the bill, you have only sales tax to prop up a state of 30 to 35, 40 million people in the next decade. What happens when we have a decline and sales taxes go down? You have no money to pay your bills. You can't be a one-legged horse, And so we don't have an income tax. We don't ever want an income tax. We put a stake through that heart of that issue, Jack. But you cannot, and you saw the difference. It takes so much compression compared to the homestead exemption. So you saw up there. So for 5.8 billion in homestead exemption money, you get double what you get for 12 billion of compression. So it's good to do it. It helps. And the reason is the homeowners, look, when you do compression, everyone gets advantage. Businesses, small business, big, it's good for everybody. But the homeowners, we have to focus on because the businesses, they'll absorb some of it. They'll pass some of it on. They'll hire a lot of accountants to address it. But we want business. We're big business. We want business, and compression is good to help everyone. But to help homeowners who work at all those businesses, and we'll ask for a raise every year because they can't pay their property tax. By the way, what we did in 19, Jack, on property taxes is working. Houston Chronicle, I don't know if Jeremy Wallace is here. Is Jeremy here? But Houston Chronicle, they said for the first time in decades, property taxes have gone down. All over the state, property tax, even though appraisals went up, because we broke the appraisal off from the final tax bill. People look at their appraisals like they used to, like that's their tax bill. That's not their tax bill anymore. We stopped that. We now limit the growth of government to 3.5%, Jack. And that's, so no matter how much the appraisal, they have to lower the rates. And so that's another system. That's another reason we didn't want to go to appraisal caps. It would have destroyed what we've accomplished. The governor signed, the speaker actually voted for it back in 19 when he was a member. It's working. But Jack, you can't get there on only compression because that's our revenue sales tax. You take that away, you can do it, but you have to increase the sales tax dramatically. So you can do it, but you can't have one revenue source because if that dries up, it's gone. And by the way, compression, that's another thing I read about. It's lasting. We can take that compression away in any budget. If we come back, now we won't next session, I don't think, because we got a good reserve, but we come back one budget or, years from now, 5 or 6 years. Look, we had a downturn in 11. We had a downturn in 17. We didn't have any extra money. You come in here in a bad budget year, you know what they're going to do? They're going to grab that compression, take it back, and your taxes are going to skyrocket. That's why you do a little bit of both. Compression, I'm not anti-compression. 2/3, I signed off on that. I agreed with the House on that. We increased our compression by 2.6 billion. But you have to have both.
If you do that bill on the current proclamation, you can't pass it.
Sure. Yeah, the governor. Yeah, what do you mean we can't pass it?
Doesn't he have homestead exemption?
No, the governor can put on the call. He doesn't write legislation.
So he can veto it.
Look, do you think the governor's going to veto a homestead exemption? Now, I'm not worried about the governor signing it. The House has got to pass it. The House has got to pass it. You know, no, I don't know poison pills, no excuses. You saw up there, if we don't pass homestead exemption, then that's literally taking 20, I want to make that the headline. No homestead exemption, you've lost $20,000 over 30 years of living in your home. $20,000, 700 more a year, 700 more a year. Next question.
Other questions? There's this lady over here.
Yes, ma'am. Hi.
Hi, Laura Davis with Texas Parents United.
Yeah.
I want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for supporting the HB 900. I don't
Yes.
think the typical Texas adult realizes to what extreme literature and schools have had gone to. And I was wondering, in regards to gender studies, we're in Leander, Texas,
Yeah.
and we just had a video where a teacher in the 4th grade was talking about how she talked about gender studies with the little 9-year-olds.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to see if you knew that that was an issue. And
You know, the parents, and I've gotten a lot of material from a number of parents around the state. You all are our canaries in the cave. You know, we have 8,000 campuses, roughly 1,200 school districts, 5.5 million kids, 360,000 teachers. We don't know unless you tell us. And I will tell all of you, that was a good bill by Jared Patterson. Angela Paxton had SB 13. We tried to get them both together. They said it would go down on a point of order, so we didn't want to kill 900, but that's what we were waiting for, to try to make them both work, because they did a little different things, but Jared's bill is a very good bill. I thought this was okay. Okay, are the books really that bad? There's a book called Let's Talk About You. Literally, I've been wanting to take it on one of my Fox appearances. I don't know that I can show it. And this is books the kids have in, you know, middle school. There's a page in there that talks about showing our children how to go to pornographic websites. They talk about pornography is sweet and sugary. Pictures that I can't even show my female staff, but yet it's in our schools. And this is why the Ken Kings of the world need to stop school choice from Texas. The number one issue today that people say in a national poll of wanting school choice is because they don't like that being taught to their children. We don't want our kids, I've got 8 grandkids. I don't want them in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 5th grade seeing this filth. Look, there's a real left woke agenda out here that I think is anti-family, confusing to kids. And we've seen it grow, and we have to fight back. And so thank you for being one of the moms on the wall.
There's a question in the back.
Governor, I'd like to ask, so the governor, you know, one of the human smuggling is on the
Yes.
special session agenda. And it doesn't speak specifically to the border. It talks about human smuggling. And I presume that's across the state.
Yes,
And I equate that to human trafficking. I
Yes.
was just curious if
I
that,
do too.
okay. Could you speak to what you see as potential issues that could be addressed during the special session on that?
So I'm sure the House will send us some good work. We'll send them some good work. House Bill 7, which was kind of came out of House Bill 20 that went down a point of order, called for a border force. The disagreement in the House is they didn't want it under DPS or the Texas Rangers. And I said, wait a minute, what are you guys talking about? Don't want it under the Texas Rangers and DPS? Like, that's our border, that's our controlling law enforcement. You have to have an integrated network. But we set up a border force to be under a Texas Ranger, reporting to the governor, working side by side, because you have to integrate, all these commands. So I think I'd like to do that. The House sent us a bill that didn't have a fiscal note on it. I thought, you want us to hire 1,000 people, but you didn't put any money in the bill. These are the things that kind of puzzle me from this session. You send us a bill to hire 1,000 people and form a border force. And you know what that bill actually said? If they needed something, just go grab it from DPS. You need a plane, go get a plane. You need a car, take a car. I mean, it was a crazy bill. So we fixed it. And we sent it back. Oh, no, we don't want it because we don't want a Texas Ranger in charge of our border force. Excuse me. Okay, so border force, we need clamping down on smuggling the best we can. The child, it's modern day sex slavery, and this president allows it to happen. Fentanyl, we know all those issues. We had a bill 2424 by Brian Birdwell that would have said if you cross the border illegally the first time, you go to jail for Class A misdemeanor, second time state jail felony, and if you're a criminal, depending on the offense, you can go to jail for life. And the House didn't pass that bill. I'm asking them to pass that bill this time. So thank you.
Let's do one more question. Wait, over there?
I'm glad I'm not choosing.
It's that. Okay, well, you don't have a microphone, so what we'll do two. Let's do this one. Sorry, Clint.
Hi, thank you for your time today.
Sure.
I'm just wondering how in a special session you foresee school choice passing, and if it does go through, will teacher pay raises be tied to it like they were in the regular?
You know, I don't know. First of all, the second part of the question, I don't know. When Dade came over that day, and I didn't know why he was coming. I hadn't talked to him in 2 years. And I'm an easy guy to talk to. I'm the easiest guy to talk to anywhere. I like to talk. But he came over and he said, I have an idea. And I said, what's that? He said, put school choice on HB 100. And I said, really? He said, yeah, we get it all done. So let's try it again. There's no reason. Look, I think there was a button that they were wearing over there, Ken King, 24 people against school choice. If you're a House member and you're killing school choice, well, then don't punish the other, 5.2 million students and parents in the state because you don't want it. Bracket your district out, bracket your counties out. And guess what? They're going to hear it from the parents and say, what'd you do that for? So to those 24 anti-school choice Republicans, just bracket your school districts out. Bracket them out. See if you have the courage to do that. Because they're going to get hell from those parents. Say, well, what about us? These are primarily Republicans who have an attachment somehow or another to the education system. Not 100%. They were on the school board, they work school, and look, a senator has 1 million people. And so if there's one pocket somewhere on any issue that's unhappy with them, it's a broader view and they can absorb some hits but you're a House member, you're gonna hear from a lot of people in a smaller area. And I think some worry about their election, but they're listening to the superintendents. They need to be listening to the parents. So I don't know how it will come out, but.
Well, this guy over here, Erica.
Yes, thank you. Lieutenant Governor, I wanted to ask you, the words that you kind of used at the beginning of this were, it's a tale of two cities.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much you were watching the House floor yesterday. There was,
I wasn't.
I figured you were a little bit occupied.
Busy.
There was a moment where essentially a big bipartisan group honored Speaker Dade Phelan and called him, I believe the words used were the best speaker they had known.
Yeah.
We have seen, obviously, the Attorney General had called on Phelan to resign. That ended up not being the main headline of the week. But do you anticipate with this case that you've kind of built against Phelan, do you anticipate making any sort of similar call for him to resign?
Look, I'm not asking him to resign. I didn't put out that note. I'm not even suggesting that. I'm suggesting it, run the House in a way that's functional, that we can get things done so we don't every session come up to getting 1,000 bills from them in the last week. And all the House members come over and say, can't you pass my bill? My bill's not passed. You sent us 800 in the last 7 days. I'm sorry. And quit squeezing us down to Senate bills in the last 10 days. They just need to, they would be so much happier if they did that. I mean, I don't know what they did over there. I'm sure they all love it, whatever. I know this, when some of them go back in their primaries this year, for those who voted for gambling, they may not think that was a good idea. For those who voted against gambling, they may not think it's a good idea because maybe the casinos will be primarying them. He made them cast a vote on a bill he knew we weren't going to hear because we didn't have, I said it all, we don't have any votes. Don't have any votes. But now there's a jersey on every one of those members on gaming. There's a jersey on every one of those members if they don't pass a homestead exemption for real this time. there's a jersey on them for a lot of bad votes that he forced. So I'm glad they love him today. When they go home in their primaries, we'll see how, if they still love him. But, Dade's a challenge. But I'm not asking him to be replaced. I'm not asking him to resign. But we just have to be, this should be easy. It's 3 Republican leaders. This should be easy. I shouldn't need to take Tylenol 3 times a day. It should be easy.
Governor,
So-
thank you very much. It's 11 o'clock.
Thank all of you, and I'm proud of my senators, all of them. In many ways, the other day, when the impeachment became real, our members got together and prayed, because this is serious business. Sunday, the only Sunday that we're in session, the last Sunday, we had a church service. I started this 3 years ago on the Sunday, and the members come and they pray together and they sing. And then we went out on the floor and we held hands and we said the Lord's Prayer. Republican and Democrat in the Senate. I have some wonderful, wonderful people to work with. They're smart. They work hard. Both parties, many members are really Christ-centered, strong in their faith. And it allows us to make the tough calls. It allows us to do the work. And the House also, I know, have many strong people of faith as well. But I'm proud of my Senate. I'm proud of the Republicans. Brandon Creighton, Charles Swertner, Joan Huffman, I go down the whole list. And they
Paul
put in
Beckford,
Paul
sure.
Beckford, they put in all 19 of the Republicans and the Democrats. Look, we just don't have this chaos of points of order. We don't have this chubbing thing. Our Democrats get up and they debate, and maybe they debate for an hour. They have a chance to say what they want to say, but we don't have this chaos. And so I'm lucky to be the lieutenant governor, and I'm lucky to have these 31 senators, and especially my 19 Republicans, the most conservative body we've ever had in the Texas Senate. And I don't mean to offend anyone today with any of my remarks, but I didn't get elected to come here and sugarcoat anything for the voters. The voters need to know what's going on, and they're looking for a leader, and I intend to lead on the things that I think that matter to them. And if I rub a few people the wrong way, I'm sorry. Thank you all. God bless.